Hi, my name is Bill Ritter Jr. I'm the former governor of Colorado in the United States of America. Today I'd like to present a message of thanks and a message of hope to the Iran Conference for Human Rights and Democracy. I want to congratulate all the people who are here today and here in resistance to the regime presently in Iran. I want to thank our keynote speaker and thank her for her courage, for her vision, and for just being bold in her resistance. Ms. Maryam Rajavi, thank you. I certainly want to send a message of thanks as well to all the people around the international community who stand in support of the people of Iran, and really send a message as well to the people of Iran who are inside the country and have been part of the protests and part of the resistance which have intensified over time since 2017. And a special message today to those people who are imprisoned in Iran, who have been subjected to abuse and torture, some of the worst forms of physical violence because of their own efforts to protest all of the things that are wrong about the regime. But I think so much of it is the evidence of a weakened regime. If you think about the intensifying protests since 2017, the efforts of the international community to support the people who have been part of those protests within Iran, and then really the presidential elections that were recently held in Iran where people protested by not voting, where in Iran it's so important to so much of your own ability to live to demonstrate that you have voted, people who decided not to. And then I would argue that the installation of Ebrahim Raisi as the president is really another sign of weakness. This is a man who should not be president of Iran. He should be on trial for crimes against humanity. And people around the world and the international community for a very long time have understood Raisi's role in the 1988 massacres, where literally, because of him and the Death Commission, there were tens of thousands of Iranians who were murdered, brutally murdered, because they protested the regime, because they did not support the regime, because they spoke out against the regime. This is the person that was chosen to be president, a sign that you bring the worst form of abuser in to try and lift up a weakened regime. The darkest hour is just before dawn. And really, it is a message of hope that you know that the international community stands with the people of Iran. We make a clear distinction between the evils of the regime and the goodness of the people of Iran. And I want to spend just a minute talking about what we think of and what we mean when we talk about a democratic Iran. We mean that the people in Iran can associate freely with whom they want. They can assemble freely. The people of Iran have a right to express themselves by voice, by voicing their opinion. They have a right to express themselves by writing what they believe and what their opinion is. This is not a freedom that can go away. The freedom to be able to write and express yourself is freedom of speech, it's freedom of the press, but also the freedom to exercise your faith, whatever your faith may be, the freedom to vote in free and fair elections. We stand in solidarity with you in the present and in the present struggle. But we are here, and we will do everything we can as part of that international community to ensure there is a different Iran in the future, to ensure that we welcome into the international stage an Iran that looks completely different from the weakened regime of today. We stand with you in your struggle. Thank you.
Thank you to the organizers of the 2021 Convention for a Free Iran for inviting me to join you today. As the former governor of Montana, I recognize that we may have many differences when it comes to our upbringings, our experiences, our cultures, and more. Yet no matter those differences, I believe there are many areas of common ground that unite us. Most significantly, through our shared hope for a world that could and should be. A world where all humans, no matter their beliefs, their gender, the color of their skin, or where they live, are treated equally and feel safe. A world where the basic pillars of human rights are respected and freedoms protected. A world where the people may take part in their governments in a democracy with equal protection of the law. These universal norms of dignity and respect and justice and peace, formally established in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, they are a fundamental part of what makes us human. They are the values that we share together in the United States, in Iran, and all across the globe. They are standards formed both through a long human history and through our commonalities regardless of varying religions, political systems, and cultures. That's because whether you live in Tehran, Iran, Manhattan, New York, or Manhattan, Montana, we all value and want the same things. Not a single country has been without a history of struggle or with a straight line to progress. Each nation's struggles are unique, and some far more oppressive than others. But no matter the hurdles, where and when progress is made is through a common thread, a determined people. Determined people are unwilling to be deterred despite the obstacles. Determined people understand that they can make a difference, not just now, but in ways that will impact future generations to come. The Iranian people, in the battle for a free and democratic Iran, are a determined people. You refuse to accept the status quo, never settling for less. You refuse to allow discrimination and violence against women and girls and among the many minority populations. You refuse to stand by while prisoners and political dissidents are subjected to inhumane conditions, torture, or disappearances. You refuse to let fear, retribution, and terrorism overcome opportunities for peace. Most importantly, you refuse to give up hope. For it is hope that keeps alive the determination of the Iranian people to exercise the rights of freedom of expression and peaceful assembly, to hold the Iranian regime accountable. Americans support the Iranian people in their desire for change. We recognize the contributions of the people of Iran, stemming from a vibrant history of art, architecture, literature, science, and medicine that reached across the globe. And we share in the hope for a better life for all Iranian people. You know, it's not so often that the United States Congress comes together to agree on something in a bipartisan manner, when the two political parties echo the same message. House Resolution 118 is one of those moments. Over 240 elected officials representing states spanning across a diverse America, quote, recognize the rights of the Iranian people and their struggle to establish a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran. It is the people of Iran that will create this democratic, secular, and non-nuclear nation. Iranian people are looking for a change, Real durable change comes from within, not reliant on outside nations to lead in action. And we hear you, we see you, and we are behind you. During the struggle to end apartheid in South Africa, Nelson Mandela stated, "I've walked that long road to freedom, but I've discovered that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. I've taken a moment here to rest, to steal a view of the glorious vistas that surround me, to look back at the distance I've come. But I can only rest for a moment, for with freedom comes responsibilities, and I dare not linger, for my long walk is not yet ended." The people of Iran have witnessed and summited many of the hills before them. Hills of state-sponsored terrorism, of human rights violations, of torture of dissidents. The hills of the suppression of ethnic and religious minorities, of discrimination against women and girls. The people of Iran have witnessed the hills of elections that are anything but democratic, free, and fair. And yet, you dare not linger. The path to a free and democratic Iran, it may be long and winding, but it is a path that moves forward. As Americans, we are behind the Iranian people as they walk in their path forward to freedom. As humans, we know that our differences are small compared to what unites us. And we bond together in our hope for the world that could be, the world that ought to be, and the world that will be. Thank you again. I sincerely hope that this conference fills you with hope and inspiration for your future ahead.
Let me begin by acknowledging and thanking the Convention for a Free Iran, and of course, Mrs. Rajavi, for the opportunity to speak with you today. You're at a special crossroads in history, and it's an honor for me to be associated, even in this small way, with your work. Your ideas are compelling, and you've had the A-list of political figures and experts come to pay their respect and to speak with you. People with deep experience and expertise in foreign relations and in knowledge of Iran. I watched the video of some of them. My experiences have been different. I've been a mayor and a governor out in the middle of America, in Tennessee, a long way from Washington or any other capital. I've never been a member of Congress or worked in the executive branch of our federal government. I don't share foreign policy expertise with many of your other speakers. But we do have a common theme that's even more basic. Every one of us shares a deep belief in the dignity of every human being and in the God-given, the inalienable rights of every human being. The presence of speakers like myself from other experiences and other places underlines the growing power of your movement. The awareness of the dreams and the struggle of ordinary Iranian people is moving beyond a world of insiders in the corridors of power and into the consciousness and the conscience of millions of Americans. I support and admire your work, and I'm sure everyone who speaks to you does. I also want to tell you in my own personal terms why I feel that way. I have a simple and somewhat old-fashioned philosophy of life, that the big job of every grown-up is simply to make the world a little bit better for the next generation. As a governor, I worked on education and on preserving the environment as my way of fulfilling this obligation. Human progress is built on each generation standing on the shoulders of the one before. I admire you because that's exactly what I think you're doing. I've learned a lot about your strategies, about promoting democracy, the separation of church and state, gender equality, the rule of law. But it seems to me that the purpose, the goal of all those strategies is to make the world a little bit better for the next generation, to build a better society for the young people of Iran, today's young people, and those of generations yet to be born. There are strong parallels between what you're working to accomplish today and the birthing struggles our United States went through in the 18th century. There's a common thread between them, a bedrock belief that we all have God-given human rights that any government must respect, and the belief that the best way to secure those rights, now and for the long term, is through a democratic, secular government. Thomas Jefferson described them: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. The approval of our own Constitution was delayed until these rights were further enumerated in the first 10 amendments to it, our Bill of Rights. Thomas Jefferson would feel right at home with the principles that you set down in your 10-point plan. I'm a Tennessean, and for me there's another connection between your movement and Tennessee's own history. We've sent 3 presidents to Washington over the years. Of these, far and away the most consequential was Andrew Jackson. He was a Tennessean. His home was just a few miles from where I'm sitting right now. President Jackson is remembered as being the president who championed the rights of the common man against what he called a corrupt aristocracy. His 6 predecessors as president were all from elite backgrounds, from the original colonies, anything but representative of the common man. Jackson was born a common man. He trusted them. He was the first president from west of the mountains, the frontier. The Jackson presidency was an inflection point in the American experiment that permanently changed the way our democracy works and where power in it lies. Now, the analogy is limited. The aristocracy you're fighting is far more evil, far more corrupt than anything we've ever experienced. But what you're doing, taking power away from a corrupt elite and placing it firmly in the hands of ordinary people, the common men and women of your nation, is something we Tennesseans value and respect. We can see a little bit of our Tennessee character and worldview in you. One principle that your struggle has embraced is especially impressive to me, the principle that lasting reform must come from within. I believe that history has shown again and again, in country after country, that you're exactly right. And America, to be honest, has not always figured that out. But you figured out that a lasting, durable change in Iran will only come about when that change is driven by the Iranian people themselves. Your approach, in my opinion, is very far-seeing and wise. Now, I've made some comparisons between our own history here in America and what you're working toward, but there's also one fundamental difference, and recognizing that, I want to offer one final thought. I believe you will be successful in creating the democratic, secular, non-nuclear Iran you seek. You're on the right side of history. It's apparent that the wheels are coming off the current regime. Your movement contains plenty of sophisticated, optimistic Iranians, in effect a government in waiting, ready to step up. When this regime collapses, creating a new Iran will take a lot of outreach to former opponents and a lot of setting aside some of the grievances of the past. America has done this multiple times, to its credit and to its benefit. However, we have never experienced anything like the regime now controlling Iran. The corruption, the purposeful and calculated brutality, the crimes against humanity it's committed have to be exposed to the world, to the sunlight. And the murderers, there's no other word, that have committed these crimes be punished. This reckoning with the past must take place before you can build a new Iran, and the world will understand this. So I salute you. You're doing what I think grown-ups are obligated to do, working to make things better for the next generation. But you're also not just any generation in a long line of them. You're in a very special time and place. Iran, and with it the whole Middle East, is at a fork in the road. One way leads backward to more corruption, more brutality, to an even darker place. The other road, the one you're working to construct, leads to the light, a better world for the young people of Iran today and for many more generations to come. To a world where your sons and daughters will finally have their own shot at life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I support you, I respect you. Godspeed.
It is an honor to be here to address the Iranian diaspora community at the 2021 Human Rights and Democracy Conference. My name is Timothy Bross. I am a lawyer and a former U.S. ambassador to the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Many of you came here to escape totalitarian and autocratic rule, intolerance, and injustice. You left behind an authoritarian and lawless theocracy, a sponsor and supporter of terrorism, a denier of basic human rights, a misogynistic collection of male rulers intolerant of women. Conceived in the name of eliminating corruption and foreign influence, the Iranian regime is an isolated land whose only friends and allies are fellow sponsors of terrorism and dictatorships. It aspires to develop nuclear weapons. Instead of eliminating corruption, the Iran regime has become one of the most corrupt countries in the world. But there is hope for Iran, for its citizens, and for all of humanity. And that hope rests squarely and centrally with all of you, the resistance. You are a force, a loud and vocal force for change. But you can and must become even louder. You can and must turn up the volume. You need to keep growing, keep speaking out, keep organizing, keep working with your friends and allies, both here in the US government and elsewhere in the civilized world. You have accomplished so much already through House Resolution 118, a bipartisan resolution by the U.S. Congress condemning the Iran regime and embracing Maryam Rajavi's 10-point plan. Through you and your colleagues and the boycott of Iran's recent elections, you have shown the world that the election of Mr. Raisi was a sham and a fraud. Mr. Raisi was not elected by the Iranian people. He was selected and appointed by the religious autocrats and cronies. Please intensify and expand your advocacy. The women and children of Iran are counting on you. The political prisoners in Iran are counting on you. Like you, they are yearning for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran. They seek a government that treats all of its citizens equally. They desire a country with a legal system and courts that enforce and respect human rights, including access to justice, health and education, and economic opportunity. All of this change is within reach. A democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Iran may sometimes seem an unattainable dream, but it's not. Thanks to your resistance and your persistence, it is more hopeful and possible than ever. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you for having me here today. I am honored to be a part of your agenda. First of all, let me start off by saying I pray for freedom for the people of Iran. It is my sincerest hope that you may one day achieve a democratic republic where gender equality thrives. The regime has allocated a large number of people to influence pages on most spaces across the internet. The government masterfully leverages platforms such as Wikipedia, fake accounts on social media, and conducts sophisticated web-based manipulation campaigns to suppress the people of Iran. Additionally, we also know from a New York Times report that Iranian hackers hacked into encrypted apps of Iranian citizens, media personalities, and journalists. The evidence indicates the hackers used this access to gather intelligence across multiple people that are a part of the opposition. The Iranian government's playbook is not only a danger for the people of Iran, but all democracies around the world. As Ars Technica reports, the US government recently seized 33 websites run by a branch of the Iranian government. These websites spread disinformation in the United States leading up to and including during the 2020 presidential election. As part of the seizure, the United States Department of Justice said those 33 sites were used by the Iranian Islamic Radio and Television Union, the IRTVU, and affiliated with the IRGCQF. The Atlantic Council reports that Iran operates an extremely vast and effective operation, and that FireEye found the complicated web of deception all the way back into August of 2018. The operations targeted various nations and any Iranian that opposes the current government regime. The Atlantic Council published an inventory of known influence. This propaganda and manipulation campaign includes Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, and more. They also reported that in 2011, that's 10 years ago, the head of the IRIB claimed he had trained at that point, a decade ago, cyber battalions of over 8,400 people, including what he referred to as media experts and specialists. Also, according to Amnesty International, the Iran regime has blocked independent reporting on COVID-19 and the handling of COVID-19 pandemic preparation, vaccination, and the emergency around illnesses and deaths. If the Ministry of Culture and Islamic Guidance did not agree with the media report, they gave that news source a very stern warning. The Checkpoint Research Organization has also confirmed findings that Iranian entities loosely affiliated with the Iran government have targeted Iranian expats and dissidents and many groups like the MEK. They found Windows attacks that allowed operatives to steal documents and access Telegram accounts. They also found an Android malware that extracted two-factor authentication codes from SMS messages. They also found ongoing evidence of Telegram social engineering. The tools and methods were mainly used against opposition and resistance movements. This is our call to action. The world needs to come together and dedicate ourselves to a bold new approach for freedom for the people of Iran. Step one, we need a comprehensive strategy across all countries that work across governments and the private sector to enable the citizens of Iran to achieve a free and democratic Republic of Iran. Step two, we need to ensure that the people of Iran can share in real time threats that could have an impact on their anti-regime protests and their calls for democracy. Step three, we need to continue to provide financial backing, expert advice, traditional media, and social media influence campaigns to support freedom, honesty, and transparency for the people of Iran. We must look at the effectiveness of our current diplomatic measures, set up perhaps an international technical threat hunting team that can look for malicious activity from the Iranian regime aimed at its own people, the people of Iran and Iranian expats. For the Iranian people, here's what I recommend you do next to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your freedom movement. Learn and invest in knowledge and use of privacy and anonymity tools. Make sure you are using only the best virtual private networks, encryption, different types of browsers such as the Tor browser. If you see that there are extreme or complete blackouts of access to the internet, think about having in place peer-to-peer networks and devices. You can take a look at systems such as Lantern and FireChat. They may be of assistance to those inside Iran. Make sure that you always practice safe surfing. And when we do, the overall future for the people of Iran and the world will take a more positive and different course. Thank you for having me. I am honored to share these insights, advice, and ideas with you. To the people of Iran, I wish that you would be healthy, be safe, be well. Please follow my advice for safer, more private, and secure internet actions as you work on achieving a true free country.
Thank you all very much. It's great to be with you again, even if it's virtually. As you all know, my uncle, President Kennedy, wrote a famous book called While England Slept, documenting the failure of appeasement towards Adolf Hitler in World War II. He fought against imperial dictatorship, against Hirohito, and his brother, my Uncle Joe, was killed in Europe fighting for the freedom of our allies. He fought and died against Nazi Hitler. Electing a mass murderer like Raisi shows that Khomeini and his mullahs have given up any facade of moderation. There's no excuse anymore for denying the truth we can't be in denial for what the mullahs regime represents. The United States State Department ranks Iran's mullahs as the #1 exporter of terrorism in the world, the #1 violator of human rights of its own people, the #1 executioner and torturer of its own people, as well as sending its agents to Europe, to the United States, Latin America, under the pretense of diplomacy, to plant bombs in our backyard. Even more, they also have been caught red-handed building a nuclear weapons program after promising the world that they would comply with international treaties. Thank you, Madam Rajavi. Thank you, PMOI and CRI, for exposing these lies of the mullahs. President Kennedy went to Berlin in his administration to side with the freedom for those who were besieged in Berlin at that time. And as many of you know, his famous words to show his solidarity, that Berlin's fight was all the world's fight. He said, "Ich bin ein Berliner." So I am proud, as I have said before, at this gathering and others, in Farsi, to say, "Man Irani hastam."
Thank you very much. It is such a pleasure to be with you, Madam Rajavi. I wish that we could be together as we were in 2018. I remember those days outside Paris in the suburbs when you literally had 100,000 people coming to support your efforts to overturn the regime in Iran. And we were excited, we were joyous, we were there willing to confront the regime on various issues. And little did any of us know at the time that while we were there in Villepinte, that the regime's tentacles had reached out and was plotting to have a mass terrorist attack on that event. It has been 3 years since that event, and during that interim, the people who were involved in planning that attack have been arrested and have been brought to trial. And I was very proud to be one of the persons who filed suit against those perpetrators of that attempted terrorism. And they have now been sentenced with the organizer, the diplomat, an actual diplomat of Iran, sentenced to 20 years, and others getting sentences from 15 to 18 years. I bring that up because I think it's important to understand that Iran does not just persecute its own people within its own borders, but its reach goes global. The regime is able to reach out and to assassinate those who disagree with it. They send out their propagandists to attack Madame Rajavi and the POMI. They are on the assault constantly to try to keep those who want to bring democracy to Iran in check. We heard from General Jones and from others throughout the day of the incredible consequence of a sham election this year in Iran, in which an actual butcher was elected. This is not a man whose hands are dipped in blood. This is a man whose whole body has been dipped in the blood of martyrs for freedom in Iran. And it is a striking commentary how little we have heard from Western countries about the election of this man. He is not somebody that reasonable governments, that democratic governments should deal with. This is not someone who is a representative of the people of Iran. He is simply a representative of the mullahs and their ironclad control. So what can be done? Well, I think the thousands of people who are watching this event, who are participating in this event in places throughout the world, can in fact do something. And that something is to endorse the program that Madam Rajavi has been talking about for over a decade. And that is the 10-point plan that would bring the kind of stable democracy to Iran that all of us support. A democracy that gives equal rights to men and women, that does not impose a state religion, but allows people to express their faith as they choose, that allows a judiciary to act independently, and in which there are free and fair elections. And finally, I would say that particularly given the question about a nuclear Iran that is on the table now, with the United States having withdrawn from the agreement with Iran on nuclear weapons, Iran is now in pursuit, and they are making no bones about it. They are being very outspoken in their desire to be able to create the ability to create nuclear weapons. This is an affront, not just, again, to the people of Iran, but to the entire world. So I would say the time is now. The time is now for those who support freedom and democracy in Iran to rise up, to make their voices heard, and for those of us in the West who already enjoy those freedoms, to stand with those who are, in fact, the beacons of freedom for the people of Iran. Thank you so much, Madam Rajavi, for once again pulling us all together. And I am hopeful that the next time it is not simply on camera, but that we are able to see each other face to face and to support your valiant efforts. Thank you so much.
Thank you and good day. It's a true honor to be with you and to stand proudly with you in the cause of a free Iran. We are witnessing the end of the religious dictatorship, and the beginning of a new era, an era, as Mrs. Rajavi has said, of freedom, of democracy, and of equality. An era in which all of the people of Iran can fulfill their true potential and restore the prosperity and the humanity that define the great nation that is Persia. 2 days from now is Bastille Day, celebrated as a day of liberation from tyranny. For those who have sacrificed for a free Iran, your Bastille Day is dawning. Every year, we celebrate your cause, a historic struggle for which the resistance has paid a tremendous price, measured in the lives of tens of thousands of martyrs. Their sacrifice will not be in vain. Their sacrifice will always be honored, as it was this morning. Today, the mullah's desperation is palpable. We can see it in the calls across Iran for an end to the intolerant and corrupt regime. The people of Iran are rising up. They have simply had enough. They have seen their beloved country become a prison to those on the inside and a pariah to those on the outside. And the regime's response, not reform, but more repression, will only accelerate the certainty of its destruction. The selection of Ra'isi as president is a reflection of the moral bankruptcy of the mullahs. Ra'isi is a documented mass murderer who, as the Prime Minister of Slovenia stated before this conference, must be investigated for his role in the 1988 massacre. He must be held accountable for a true crime against humanity. Ra'isi's selection also reflects the weakness of the regime's leaders, and most of all, their fear of the people's call for justice. And of all their fears, they fear you the most. They know that you will never give up. They know that you will never give in. They know that the movement led by Mrs. Rajavi provides the democratic alternative and the vehicle for ensuring their demise, leaving them, to quote Ronald Reagan, on the ash heap of history. We must let the people of Iran determine their own course. If we do, they will throw off the yoke of dictatorship and chart a new democratic future. For my country and for others, the first rule should be to do no harm. Do not take measures that will extend the life of the regime that will go down in history as one of pure evil. We must stand for human rights and human dignity. We must be true to our words. We must not repeat the mistakes of 2015, when the regime was handed billions and billions of dollars, which were then used to support terrorist proxies, to commit acts of state terrorism, to kill hundreds of thousands in Syria and around the region, and to expand the arsenal of missiles and other weapons. The clear lesson is that there is no prospect for moderation, which always was a false hope of those who favored the nuclear agreement. That hope was and remains nothing more than an illusion. It is self-deluding to believe that a regime that would install Ra'isi as president could ever reform. No more resources for the regime. No more feeding the beast. When the people of Iran triumph over the mullahs, the regime will go quickly, as Ceausescu did in Romania, and as the mullahs know very well, as the Shah did. There is no tension between standing for human rights and seeking a nuclear-free Iran. Let me mention very briefly 3 lessons drawn from my career in non-proliferation. First, many years ago, I concluded that as long as the regime exists, it will continue to advance its nuclear program, as it has repeatedly demonstrated. It is a common but false argument that stopping the regime from acquiring a nuclear weapon by rejoining the JCPOA must be the first priority. In fact, the resources that would flow to the regime would prolong the regime. It would prolong the repression of the Iranian people, and it would also prolong the nuclear threat itself. Second, the regime has cheated on every agreement it has made. The NPT, the Safeguards Agreement, the additional protocol, and the JCPOA, even before the US withdrawal, as it never came clean on weaponization and obstructed IAEA inspectors at suspect sites. Applying the rule of common sense, who can believe that the regime does not now have a covert program, something it maintained for 40 years? Who would sign yet another agreement with a party that has cheating in its DNA? And third, the regime is only steps away from a nuclear weapon. This is clear with its enrichment to 60%, with its advanced centrifuges spinning, with the fashioning of uranium metal, and its continued stonewalling on inspections and on weaponization. The JCPOA was little more than a placebo intended to cure a cancer. It was sold as a panacea, but provided only a false sense of complacency. Rejoining will continue that farce, one made evident by the ludicrous claim that this would only be the first step, with other steps to follow to limit Iran's missile program, its commission of terrorist acts, its regional aggression, and perhaps most delusional of all, to address the regime's domestic repression. Senator Lieberman is right. There is only one solution, and that is regime change. Of course, we must prevent the mullahs from having nuclear weapons, but we can best do that by applying real pressure and letting the people prevail over the dictatorship. The NCRI 10-point plan and the organized resistance inside and outside of Iran, led by Mrs. Rajavi, provide the vision and the means that we seek, a free and democratic Iran. Thank you very much.
My name is Mitchell Reese. I'm a former American ambassador, and it is my pleasure to be able to speak today to the Free Iran World Summit. That word free, and other words like it, freedom, democracy, and human rights, unfortunately don't hold much meaning these days inside Iran. The latest presidential election was a sham, and the low voter turnout was despite threats by Ayatollah Khamenei that voting was something that was essential, that if you didn't vote, it was religious sin, and yet people still stayed away. The next president is clearly a puppet of the mullahs. And you have to ask yourself, why was this one man selected? And I think the answer is clear. It's because of his history of repression and terror and obedience to the religious authorities in their repression of the Iranian people for so many years, dating back to the late 1980s when he served as a member of the Death Commission that resulted in 30,000 people being executed. Both Amnesty International and the United Nations have called for special investigations into the role of this Death Commission, and clearly any investigation must also examine his culpability for this crime against humanity. So there's no doubt that the regime in Iran, once more, is illegitimate. It doesn't enjoy the will of the people. In fact, the people have indicated that they don't support this regime. And it stands against a much better vision, a much more hopeful vision for Iran, one that is based on freedom and democracy and human rights and dignity, where people can assemble freely, they can read the books they want, they can post on social media as they wish, they can speak out. That's the vision that Madame Rajavi has established for a new Iran, a different Iran. It's very attractive. It is very appealing to millions of people across Iran and indeed across the world, but it is feared, terribly feared, by the regime and the mullahs who now control the levers of power in Tehran. The good news is time and history are on the side of Madame Rajavi and freedom for the Iranian people. Hope must be kept alive because that's what will eventually win the day. So it's my pleasure again to speak to you today and to say that many people around the world, millions of people, stand with the Iranian people and their hopes and dreams for a better future. And we're with you, and we encourage you, and we support the vision that Madame Rajavi has established for a new Iran.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes, for your firm stance against the Iranian regime and your standing with and supporting the resistance in all these years. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the honor to speak to the 2021 Iran Human Rights and Democracy Summit for a free and democratic Iran. Every citizen of Iran has the right to freedom, democracy, and the chance to see their hopes and dreams come true. My name is Joe Donnelly. I am the former United States Senator from the great state of Indiana, a state that has great affection for our Iranian brothers and sisters and is so supportive of your campaign for freedom and democracy and human rights in Iran. My country, the United States, stands with the people of Iran and the goals of your conference to see a free Iran that respects the human rights and religious beliefs of all its people. I want to thank the Iranian diaspora for the chance to be with you. The power of your organization and all of you is amazing. You come from 5 continents with a common goal of a democratic Iran for you, your children, and all future generations. Just last week, the United States celebrated on July 4th, the celebration day of independence for our nation. In early 1776, we did not know if our efforts for independence would be successful. There were hardships, lost military battles, and days and months and years where our freedom never seemed possible. The people of the United States never gave up, and I know you will never give up. And the people of Iran will never give up your quest for a free, democratic, safe Iran that welcomes all religions, welcomes all ethnic groups, and reestablishes its place as a friend to other countries and becomes part of those nations that help bring peace to the world. The government that is in place in Iran today has instead a long history of human rights violations, and it spreads terrorist activities around the world. That's not who the people of Iran are or want to be. Instead, Iran's citizens have peacefully and heroically demonstrated throughout their country in recent years for change and a better life. And they were attacked, beaten, jailed, and killed by this government because they stood up for a better future. I stand with you. The United States stands with you. And the world stands with you. It is time to stop the terror tactics and the human rights abuses and to restore Iran to a place where they can be seen as a beacon for hope and peace and freedom. The recent sham election that was boycotted by most of Iranians is proof of the people's choice for a free Iran. As reported in the media, Ebrahim Raisi, a member of the 1988 Death Commission, was selected by Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei to be the next president of Iran. According to Amnesty International, and as addressed in the House Resolution 118, co-sponsored by 250 members of Congress, thousands of Iranian political prisoners were executed in 1988. The rights of women, our sisters, mothers, daughters, and friends are under constant attack in Iran. It has been stated that women's equality in Iran is not acceptable to today's Islamic Republic. The damage being done to Iran because of the dictator's attitudes toward women is terrible. There are so many lost ideas, so much lost talent, so many incredible women leaders who have never had their voice heard. Iran's women deserve to share an equal part in their nation's life. Anything short of that is unacceptable. On June 30th, 2018, thousands of people gathered in Paris at the Free Iran Gathering, where they supported advocates for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran, and showed support for the opposition leader, Mrs. Maryam Rajavi's 10-point plan for the future of Iran, which calls for the universal right to vote, free elections, a market economy, and it advocates gender, religious, and ethnic equality, a foreign policy based on peaceful coexistence, and a non-nuclear Iran. Imagine an Iran that exported peace and knowledge and friendship and help to other peoples and places. That's the Iran you are working so hard to create. That's the Iran your efforts can make possible. That's the Iran which its citizens dream of creating and living in. Your hard work and sacrifice and efforts make the reality of that dream come closer every day. You've seen the light of freedom growing brighter every day in Iran, and your continued dedication to the cause of Iranian freedom ensures that it will continue. We can see an Iran that helps end hunger instead of exporting terror to places like Yemen. We can see an Iran that helps lead the way in solving climate change in the Middle East and elsewhere. And we can see an Iran that is a reliable partner in making our world a better, safer place for all its citizens and everyone else. That's your dream, and that's the dream of those who live in Iran today. You work every day to make the dream of a free and democratic Iran come true. It's not easy work, but it's noble work. It's very, very important to the whole world, and we are grateful for your dedication and devotion. May your success grow ever stronger, and please know the prayers and hope and dreams of the people of Iran and the world are with you. Thank you so much for all you are doing to make the world a better place and to make Iran a free beacon for all. Thank you so much.